I'm gonna talk to you today about making the business case for humanity, which means that I'm going to talk to you about culture, because culture is where the humans gather in business. And specifically, I'm going to talk to you about how to maximize the commitment of your employee culture to deliver any strategic or performance goal that you have. Now, maximizing the commitment of your employee culture, that's a big subject. We could spend a lifetime talking about maximizing the commitment of your employee culture. I don't have a lifetime to spend talking to you about maximizing the commitment of your employee culture. I have 40 minutes. So I figured I had a choice. I can make the 40 minutes seem like a lifetime to you, or I could focus on what's most important. Today, I'm going to focus on what's most important. And what's most important is your company, like every company, is regularly betting its life on the ability to roll out new strategies into the marketplace. Ahead of schedule, ahead of budget, on the heads of your competitors. And yet most strategies in most companies don't really work. They really don't. If you take a hard post-mortem look at most strategies in most companies, they don't really do what they're supposed to do. They don't really happen when they're supposed to happen. They don't really cost what they're supposed to cost. Most strategies in most companies only look like they're moving forward because they're being slammed from behind by the next strategy. Okay, stop giving me the look. I'm talking about every other company but your company, okay? Every other company in the world but your company has this problem. And that's because even the smartest companies in the world subscribe to the most dangerous strategic myth, that a strategy has to be planned well to be successful. When in fact, a strategy has to be implemented well to be successful. Implemented well starts with being able to enroll your employee culture in ferocious support of that strategic or performance goal. If you can do that, you're well on your way to achieving performance insurance. But you are building a base camp on Mount Delusional if you think that any strategy, any performance goal will ever be successful without the hardcore support of this particular group. And because it's always darkest before it turns pitch black, let me make it even worse for you. Your customers are generally employees somewhere too. That means they're part of the overall employee culture. And they will decide to protect or reject your company based in large part on how they perceive you treat people just like them. Now, unless there are renowned circumstances, your company is known as the best employer in the industry or the worst, that perception is going to be an intuitive mind meld between your employee culture and your customer culture. But it's going to be based in large part on what kind of legitimate enthusiasm your people show for your products, your pricing, your policies. Because as an employee somewhere myself, I know I would never show that same kind of legitimate enthusiasm unless I was being treated with a certain type of deep and rare respect. Now, maybe you're thinking that none of this should even be necessary to talk about. Because after all, if you look at the strategic and performance goals for your company, who could argue with it? I mean, what are the goals? What's the purpose of any strategy you have in the company right now? To increase revenue? To increase margin? To speed time to market? To better the customer experience? To make market share? To take market share and hold it without reducing margin? World domination? Which employee working for any manager could ever argue with the irrefutable logic of these corporate strategies? And in a perfect world, if you're a manager, your people wouldn't argue at all. They'd immediately grasp this logic and devote themselves wholeheartedly toward achieving them. Well, wake up, wipe the drool from your desk, and say hi to reality. Because in the real world, neither business logic, nor management authority, nor any compelling competitive urgency will ever convince an employee culture to adopt a corporate cause as if it were its own. In that killing field between company concept and cultural commitment lies many a failed strategic plan. You want your people to buy something from you? That's great. You just have to know how to sell it to them. That means knowing how to sell to an employee culture, knowing how the culture works and how to work it. And I can tell you right now, that's not a matter of informing your culture about anything. It's a matter of inspiring it. It's not a matter of PowerPoint or even bonus programs. It's a matter of vision and values. And it is not a matter of logic. It's a matter of logical methods for stirring deep response. Now, you had better be able to stir that deep response, because who is going to decide the success of any strategy or performance goal in your company or on your team, if you're running the company or running the team, start by crossing yourself right off the list. Your employee culture has the first vote. If your culture wants something to happen, it's going to happen. And if it doesn't want it to happen, it is not going to happen. Now, despite this, I found very few managers who actually have an accurate working definition of what a culture is. Managers sling around culture all the time, but very few really understand it. It is the most overused, least understood concept in business. It was Merriam-Webster's word of the year in 2014. So according to the most popular dictionary in the entire English language, it was the most searched for word in the entire English language. Now, you know, if banana had made word of the year instead, by now companies would understand what a banana is. And they would understand it's not going to peel itself just to feed you. You actually have to know how to work the fruit. So even though that doesn't really sound right, I want to talk to you about working the fruit today and how to do that. Because really, if the success of your career and your company depends on you achieving results through other people, and those other people happen to work for you, understanding the true motivations of an employee culture is the most critical information you can have to be successful. So the more you know about this, the more successful you're going to be. So I'm going to start out by explaining how the contemporary definition of culture used by business today first came about. But before I do that, let me just do a quick check here. How many people in this room here are actually managers with head count? Raise your delicate, well-manicured fingers if you're a manager. Okay, how many of you would classify yourself more as the managed? Raise your tough, callous, working-class hands. Okay, you managed? I'm going to be talking about you for a little while here. Don't you start getting all snarly and cocky going, your career could take a sudden wrong turn. You could become a manager that fast. You're going to wish you'd listened to this information. Okay, so the contemporary definition of culture used by business today first came about with a woman by the name of Margaret Mead. Now, Margaret Mead was an anthropologist, did a lot of her work at the turn of the last century studying primitive native tribes in the deepest, darkest jungles of the South Pacific, New Guinea, Samoa. Her first book, the book that brought her to prominence, cracked the code on culture, gave business its accurate working definition, was a study of a group of primitive natives in the deepest, darkest jungles of Samoa. We're talking about as primitive gets. Now this book, called The Coming of Age in Samoa, still in print today. This book was written in 2 parts. She didn't intend to write it in 2 parts, it just turned out that way. Because the first part of the book was written from her vantage point, hiding out in the jungle, spying through the weeds at these natives as they went about their daily business. And in the first part of the book, she wrote, well, this isn't civilization. Here we have a loose group of individuals who mysteriously gather together at the beginning of each day. Then they disperse out into the jungle in no discernible pattern, and then they mysteriously gather back together at the end of each day. She said, I don't understand this. What brings these same people back together day after day after day? And when they are together, what's the glue that binds them together? Because if you're going to hang with the same group of people every day, you have to have some commonly accepted rules of behavior that everybody agrees to obey. You have to have some commonly practiced rituals to certify, communicate those rules that everybody agrees to conduct. She said, how would anybody in this funky little tribe know any of that stuff? She said, there's not even a single person here who knows how to read. She said, that's not really that big of a deal. There's not a single person who knows how to write. She said, this isn't civilization, this is chaos. Well, that was the first part of the book. The second part of the book was written after the natives stopped pretending that they didn't notice some old white woman in a Banana Republic safari outfit hiding in the weeds. I mean, it is their jungle. If somebody was in your living room behind your couch with a pair of binoculars and a notepad for 6 months, you kind of know she was there. Turns out, they knew she was there the entire time. They were just screwing with her. It's true. Everything I tell you here today is true. There's another book that's very famous primarily in anthropological circles called The Fateful Hoaxing of Margaret Mead. It was written by a group of senior anthropologists who went back to interview that same tribe many years later. And under some pressure with some free t-shirts and software and stuff, they coughed up the truth These people don't have cable. It's the most exciting thing to happen to them in years. So did they remember some whacked out old woman with a pith helmet and a pencil? Yeah, they did. And when they were told what she wrote about them, they admitted that she basically got it right. But in this book, they also admitted playing her just a wee bit. And one of the things they admit doing in this book is inventing bizarre, complex mating rituals just to see if she'd write it down. Like, oh my God. Oh, great, I see some of you finally taking notes. Pick up book, Margaret Mead. That's very inspiring. So meanwhile, the second part of Mead's book was written after the natives stopped pretending she wasn't there. And they invited her in to meet the tribe, coincidentally around dinner time. And in the second part of Mead's book, she wrote, I take it all back. This is, in fact, one of the most thoroughly civilized, heavily ritualized societies I've ever heard of or witnessed. These people, these simple natives, they have rules and rituals for everything. How to become a man, how to become a woman, birth rights, death rights, celebratory feasts for the chief, location of safe watering holes, relationships with other tribes. She said, even more amazing than this, every single person in this tribe obeys these rules faithfully. Every single person in this tribe practices these rituals accurately. She said, but they don't know how to read and they don't know how to write. How is this possible? Why does this happen? She said, well, first of all, they don't need to know how to read. They don't need to know how to write because these people know how to tell stories. She called them legends. She said, in fact, there's a chief storyteller in the tribe. Not the chief himself, but pretty far up in the hierarchy, kind of the CSO, the chief storytelling officer. You know, has a corner hut, you know, doing all right for himself. Then when information comes into the tribe, it comes in through this chief storyteller who spins it into a legend, whips it out amongst the tribe. They pick it up and whip it around amongst themselves. She said, more amazing than that, we are talking about the middle of a jungle clearing in Samoa. There's not a lot of late breaking news here. So the stories these people have are raggedy old stories. Everybody's heard them thousands of times and told them thousands of times. But they keep them fresh, they keep them relevant, they keep them urgent by repeating them over and over and over again. She said, this is a culture. Whenever you have a group of people who share the same basic lifestyle, environment, and traditions, in this case, all these natives, all in this jungle, all in this tribe, all with this chief, she said it is their shared beliefs of the rules of survival and emotional prosperity. What does it take for me to survive in this jungle, in this tribe, with this chief? And knowing that I'm going to be okay, how do I get rewarded emotionally and avoid punishment? And she said whenever people share the same basic living circumstances, they band together to share these beliefs, because the more people looking out for the safe watering hole, the safer it is for everyone. Well, business jumped on this immediately, because in any organizational environment, you have exactly the same conditions you had in that jungle in Samoa. In your organizational environment, you have exactly the same conditions you had in that jungle in Samoa. You have a group of people who all share the same basic lifestyle, environment, and traditions. They all work in your industry. They all work in your company. If you're a manager, they all work on your team. They all work for you. And so just like in the jungles of Samoa, your employees have a culture. Just like in the jungles of Samoa, that culture is all about their shared beliefs of the rules of survival and emotional prosperity. What does it take for me to keep my job working in this industry, in this company, on this team for you? And then knowing I'm basically going to be okay, how do I get rewarded emotionally and avoid punishment? And just like in the jungles of Samoa, your employees communicate these beliefs by telling stories. Just like in the jungles of Samoa, the combined power of these stories decides what they will do and what they won't do. Just like in the jungles of Samoa, everybody on your team, if you're a manager, knows these stories by heart, and they repeat them over and over and over again. Okay, for the big money, managers, who are all of the stories about that your people tell, do you think? Okay, don't look around. That's not going to save you here. Okay, a brief horrific recap in case you somehow missed the implications. If you're a manager, your employees have 25, 55, maybe 75 stories, and every one of those stories is about you. The combined power of those stories decides what your people will do and what they won't do. It doesn't matter what you say. Everybody on your team knows these stories by heart. They repeat them over and over and over again. You, the topic of all of these stories, will never hear these stories. Never. Never. Write this down. Never. They're like whistles only dogs can hear. In fact, knowing that you're here today, your employees are having a cultural legend fest in your office. Really, there's costumes, awards, speakers. They'll be eating better than you'll be eating. It'll all be buttoned up by the time you get back. I mean, never. Now, why will you never hear these stories? What, are you not also working in the same industry for the same company with the same customers and the same budgets and the same goals? Why will you never hear these stories? Two important reasons. First, these stories represent what your employee culture has figured out are the rules of survival in your world. If it were to reveal to you what it has figured out about the rules of survival working for you, what's the very first thing you would do? Change them. That's right, you mutating virus. Really, what's a possible upside to your employee culture to reveal to you that it's collected this information? Second important reason that you will never hear these stories is that you are not part of your employee culture. Don't ever make that mistake. Now, if you're a manager, you may be friendly with your people. Maybe you're actually friends with some of your people. Maybe you used to be one of your people. You got promoted, but you're not part of your people's culture. No, you are management standing outside the culture trying to sell it something. You're part of the manager culture in the company. You're not part of the employee culture. No, if you're a manager, you have a special place in your employee culture. It's a lonely place, but it's special. Okay? You are the chief. You are the chief. Do you want me to give you a minute to kind of wallow? Well, get over it, because there's some penalties attached. First of all, chief is not some honorary title bestowed upon you in abject appreciation by a devoted, humble employee culture. It's just short for chief subject of all the stories, so don't be getting a swell head about that. Just shrink it right down for you. Secondly, I mean you will never hear these stories. Now, let's assume you're coming to terms with the implications of what I'm telling you, and you are furiously scribbling action plan. And you resolve, now that you know this, to go back to your team and start being a lot closer to your people. Not because you have any greater affection for them, you're just trying to find the one employee you can crack like a walnut to get them to spill the stories. So you start engaging in a lot of frantic team building activities. Come on, let's huddle. No I in team, all that crap, until you can isolate the most susceptible candidate. And on the chosen day of delivery, you give this one unfortunate soul so much extra work to do. You know exactly where they're going to be, butt in chair for the entire day. The middle of that day, when you can walk by that chair and see the work just stacked up on both sides, you say, perfect. You grab a wire coat hanger, you hustle out to the parking lot, you find their car. You open their car, you release the brake, and you push their car all the way to the farthest edge of the parking lot. Now that night around midnight, when they finally finish all the work especially assigned to them that day as a high potential candidate, they stumble out to go home and they can't find their car. They said, where's my car? Wait a minute, I don't remember parking my car all the way out there by itself. Oh my God, what a day. So they trudge all the way out to the farthest perimeter of the parking lot, where their car's the only car in sight. And they put the key in the door and they turn the key. You pop up from behind the car. You say, psst, come here. You say, I have two hands. I have two envelopes. In this hand is an envelope containing the only disk drive with the only photos of you in that rubber sheep outfit at last year's company Christmas party. In this hand is an envelope containing our team's entire discretionary bonus pool for the year in cash. You say, now I'm a reasonable human being. You can have the negatives, you can have the cash. And really, here's all you have to do for me. Tell me a story about myself. Doesn't have to be a new one, doesn't have to be a big one. Just tell me a story. Well, I would say if you enjoy that kind of unique leverage over a member of your employee culture, you got them isolated out there where there's no other members around. You've got maximum pain and pleasure in your two hands. You're willing to deliver on both. And all they have to do is tell you a single story about you. Okay, I'd say in that circumstance, that rare circumstance only, they will, in fact, tell you a story. They'll tell you one of three the culture keeps in case it's captured. It's not one of the real stories. They're never going to tell you one of the real stories. So what do you do about this? The more you come to terms with how critical it is to manage an employee culture, the more an employee culture seems unmanageable. Well, once you understand the culture, it is the simplest operating system in the world. An employee culture is an information gathering organism designed to assure its own survival. It's a constantly recalibrating belief system of trust in the known rules of survival and emotional prosperity. The implications of that for you as a manager is that your culture's antenna is working 24/7, tracking you constantly, seeking information. Its credibility detector is nearly infallible. Its perceptions are alarmingly accurate. Its memory is elephantine. You cannot bribe, bluff, or bully an employee culture into sustainably believing or doing anything. You can't tell it what to believe. You can't stop it from existing. But you can crawl off the ledge and take comfort from realizing that an employee culture is the most rational organism in the world. It is solely concerned with understanding the known rules of survival and emotional prosperity. It's objective. It can't afford flights of fancy. It deals in the real. It's agnostic. It doesn't even mind bad news. It minds whether it can trust who's giving it the news. And it's an open system. It can't be static. It has to be constantly open to input so it can update the rules of survival and emotional prosperity. And it'll give you whatever you want. Your employee culture will give you whatever you want. You just have to give it what it wants first. Now, respecting what it wants is the difference between its defiance and compliance. But the big epiphany for you is that it is not the responsibility of your culture to understand the business logic. It is the responsibility of your business to understand the culture's logic. You get that, you're bulletproof and unstoppable in any market you choose to own. Now, a few more things about culture in general, and then I want to give you some tactical things you can do right now, and then some recommendations for the road. Let's see. So, first of all, a culture is genetic, and by that I mean every employee in your company is automatically, instantly a member of the employee culture, because the culture believes that the more people looking out for the safe watering hole, the safer it is for everyone. So there's no rope line, there's no probationary period. Every employee is a member of the culture, except, you. But every other employee is a member of the culture. And a culture is hereditary, and by that I mean because your culture exists to protect itself. That's why it comes into existence, to protect itself. It has to believe something is real in the company or it will go insane. So at some point, your employee culture, like every employee culture, had to put a stake in the ground to say, this is the way things are here. So it can navigate around it safely. And as soon as it does that, as soon as that stake goes in the ground, it makes some key decisions. Should it trust management when management talks? Should it commit financially and intellectually and physically, but withhold its emotional commitment? Is performance reinforcement the same thing as safety? Now, your culture didn't try and get it wrong when it put that stake in the ground, but it could have. It only had the data it had and its ability to interpret it. Doesn't matter, though. Stake goes in the ground, and the belief system is formed. My point to you here is, you don't know when your culture put that stake in the ground. It's not necessarily coincidental with any happening in the business. It's when the culture felt a need to clarify the way things are. So it could have been last week. It could have been last year. It could have been 10 years ago, in which case it is a belief system passed down from one tenured generation to the next. And anything new you want the culture to do, you're going to run smack into that existing belief system. Unless you understand it and understand what the culture is seized on as proof points about the way things are and recalibrate those in your favor, you're not going to be able to get the full power of the culture. The culture is also neurotic. On a good day, your culture is just neurotic. On a bad day, it's completely crazy. And you really can't blame a culture for this. You can't really blame a culture for anything it does. A culture is obsessed with trying to understand the known rules of survival and emotional prosperity in an environment it cannot reliably control or anticipate. That would drive anybody crazy. If you were all doctors, your culture would be the hypochondriac patient that came to see you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday saying, well, this rash here, it could be leukemia, right? The culture dramatizes everything, and its natural state is cynicism. Now, cynical doesn't mean the culture doesn't care. That would be apathy. Cynical means it hurts to care. And your culture still has plenty of commitment to give you as long as it believes it's safe and sane to give it to you. And finally, your culture is powerful. Your culture is an independent organism living right inside the enterprise with its own purpose and all the power to make or break any management plan and any manager. Now, its purpose is to protect itself, not you, not the company. Aligning those two things is the key to its commitment. And you really can't blame a culture for that. Managers are always confounded by that. Managers say, well, wait a minute, if the culture's concern is to survive, I got this. Here we go. Do your job and you'll keep it. How was that? Oh yeah, we'll tell you you're doing a great job. Well, that only works if your employee culture perceives a reliable through line between what happens to the company and what happens to the culture. And generally, that's just not the case. In fact, some of the best days for the company, where the company hits record financial results, can be the worst days for the culture, where for some reason the culture realizes not only it doesn't share in those fortunes, but it's having a very anxious, uncertain day. So, what can you do about this? Three tactical things you can do. First is to make the business case. Any manager in this room now or in the other rooms listening to this now who believes that culture is some fluffy thing that sits outside the running of the business and the metrics of the business will do well to rethink that. Culture is the business. The will of the culture decides the success of the business. It is the driver of the business. I'm asked all the time, because culture is my business, so what's a great culture? And I think people expect me to say, well, you know, it's a happy culture. Well, yeah, you want your culture to be happy, but a great culture is a committed culture. And the commitment of your employee culture is measurable with any metric you use to manage the business. So when you are thinking culture, think about it as the driver to the business with unparalleled power to protect, to course correct, and to evangelize strategic and performance goals. Secondly, considering the power, you want to plug into the power source. Here's the deal about a culture. It's an organism. And like any organism, it needs energy to survive. But an employee culture has an extraordinary need for energy because its entire purpose, its self-penned job description, is to remain open on input 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to take in all the information it can find. What's being said, what's not being said, facts, rumors, trends, patterns, happenings, history. Take it all in and crunch it to extract hopefully a nugget of reliable data it can use to update the known rules of survival and emotional prosperity. That's its job, and it never stops. It's exhausting. It would be exhausting if your culture could do that lying on the couch like playing a video game. It can't, because as managers, you're forcing it off that couch. We got to do something different. We got to do something more. We got to do something faster. We got to do something better. So you're forcing the culture down roads that are dark and dangerous, unproven, unlit. Your culture doesn't want to go down those roads, so it's resisting. That's taking a lot of energy. You're shoving it down those roads, So the culture has to use energy to keep up defense shields against the unknown. It's walking in a new jungle. It does not know the rules of survival and emotional prosperity. Its perceptions have to be especially acute. Now, by energy, I'm talking about the energy that your culture uses to give you what you want: accountability, innovation, resilience, openness, flexibility, loyalty, productivity, trust. Like any organism, your culture only has so much energy. And it's using most of its energy just to navigate its daily job. So anything else, anything new you want from your employee culture means you are targeting whatever energy is left, this thin ozone layer of discretionary energy. And your culture will prioritize the use of that energy to protect itself before it protects you and the business goals. And so if it perceives an environment of heightened uncertainty and anxiety, it's going to take those remaining stores of energy and detach and hunker down because it doesn't know what it's going to need to protect itself. Which is why, if you have ever, as a manager, had a very smart plan to deliver to your culture, you know the plan makes sense. You know you're pretty smart and you can make sense out of the plan. You know your culture is filled with plenty of smart people. And you stand up and you present it to the culture, and the culture just stares at you. It's not that the culture doesn't get it, it's that the culture doesn't have anything left to give to it. You've made the common management mistake, which is stepping on the gas without filling the tanks. The energy tanks are empty. What you need to do as a manager is make sure those tanks are full and topped off before you ask the culture to do anything. So the culture can say, all right, we'll give you some energy here because we're not risking our life source energy. We'll give you the discretionary stuff. Now, there are three sources of a culture's energy. Look at them like fuel tanks. This is what you want to fill constantly. The first is context. Can your employee culture understand why something is happening? Can it link it back to something else? Because if it can understand why something's happening in the business, why it's being asked to do something, why there are changes in the business, it doesn't have to dispatch any extra energy to keep a nervous eye on the threat potential of the unknown. But context is in very short supply for an employee culture. The culture always hears about the new strategies. It never gets an explanation of what happened to the old strategies. What, did the dog eat the old strategy? Where did that go? What if we had put ourselves out for that old strategy, which then came and went without any coherent explanation? We could be hanging out there in the wind, unsafe. The second thing is predictability. What's going to happen next? Again, if your culture can understand what's going to happen next, it doesn't have to dispatch any energy to keep a nervous eye on the threat potential. That energy is now available to you. So the best thing to do for a culture is to say, listen, we're here now. In this company, on this team, we're here right now. We are committed to going over here. Let's put on the table everything you think, likely or unlikely, could possibly happen between where we are now and where we need to go. And let's confirm exactly what this company will do in every one of those circumstances. At that point, you just make it a non-issue for the culture. It'll deal with it when it gets to it. And finally, self. How does being part of this company make me feel about myself? And it's not about the size of the company or your reputation in the market or anything else. It's about the character of the company, the true noble purpose of the company. What does being part of this company say about my own character, my own purpose? Because I got to tell you, every member of your employee culture, joining every employee everywhere in the world, joining everybody who works, has got to constantly answer two questions. From people you don't really know, it's so, what do you do? From people who know you the best, it's so, what did you do today? And if the answer to those two common, frequently asked questions does not reinforce a positive sense of self from your culture about affiliating with the character and purpose of the company, then every single time they're asked those questions, energy is draining. Finally, don't make this stupid mistake that dumb managers make, is to blame the culture for how it's treated. There's all these accusations about a culture that it's just incapable of understanding the finer points of business logic and the urgency. The culture is easily as smart as management. In fact, since it's obsessively focused on its own survival, its perceptions are more acute, it's probably smarter than management. So, as an example, a culture doesn't hate change. That's an accusation, an attack on a culture. Yeah, culture just doesn't understand. A culture is obsessed with protecting the known rules of survival and emotional prosperity. What does any strategic or organizational change do? It messes with the known rules of survival and emotional prosperity. So you're changing my job or my job requirements. I have to re-earn my competency. Unsafe. I used to have relationships I could depend on. I knew people, they knew me. Now we're being reorged. I don't have those anymore. Unsafe. I used to know what my bonus meant when I got it, and more importantly, if I didn't get it. Now we have some groovy new compensation program with a higher ceiling, but I don't know what it means. Unsafe. So it's not that your culture hates change, it hates the loss of the known that change represents, the known rules of survival and emotional prosperity. Your culture has all the intellectual and spiritual wherewithal to deal with any change in the business, as long as it doesn't believe it's trying to stop everything from changing at the same time. So here's what to do. When you are introducing change to your employee culture, this is what's changing. When you're explaining, this is what's changing. You must take the time to explain what isn't changing. So yes, this is new, this is different, we're going here, we're trying for this, we're going for that, but here's who we have always been. Here's who we still are. Here's who we will always be. And it doesn't have to just be good things. It can be, here's the good things that will always be here. Here's the frustrating things that will always be here. Here's the big things. Here's the small thing. If you had 5 PowerPoint slides to introduce some new strategy or goal to your culture, and you followed it with 50 PowerPoint slides and saying, here is every single thing that is not changing in this company, then you restore the culture's perspective, and it can give you what it needs to give you. Let's talk about money very quickly. Companies always overestimate how the importance an employee culture places on money. Now, your culture likes the money, okay? Your culture will take the money and spend the money and come back and ask for more money. But your culture is concerned about 2 things, and there's a chronology. First is its survival. Second is its emotional prosperity, not financial. So what your culture wants to know is the meaning of the money. If you're asking me to do something new, and you're offering me a bonus if I do it, work harder, work different, work more, and you're saying, here, do that and you get this. Shiny thing, you get this shiny thing, shiny thing. And I do what I got to do to get that shiny thing. Is the getting of that bonus a reliable indicator of my increased safety? Compensation is data to an employee culture. It wants to know, if I do this and you recognize this, am I buying safety with this? And so the culture hates to have to sweat to figure that out, because it could get wrong and it could be vulnerable. Plus, it already had to sweat to do the work. Now it wants to see management sweat. It wants to see you embed in any performance reinforcement and recognition a real understanding of what's most important to the culture. That means it's not about money. If your culture keeps asking you for more money, it means it's sifted through all the coins in the pan. It's not finding the reliable meaning. It's saying, put in more coins. Let's see if we can find it there. It's not about money. It's not about what money buys. Money will get you a lot of stuff. It can't get you what money can't buy. And what money can't buy is most important to an employee culture. True linkage between me doing the job, you recognizing that job, and me earning myself increased safety. So your culture uses money to buy meaning. Skip the middleman. Give it the meaning. I mean, the good news about this is that what your culture cares most about is what money can't buy. Y'all have an unlimited budget to provide what money can't buy. One other real quick thing, millennials. They are not the termites in the log cabin that is your company, okay? It's not that they have all the respect for tenure of an especially dim housefly. Millennials, you should thank God for millennials, because what moves millennials in general is they demand a reason to believe for their work. Something that your older, more complacent, detached employees may have given up on demanding from you. they're holding you to the standard you should have been in the first place. So don't blame the culture for how it's treated. Now, 3 things going forward for you. Okay? First is, listen, we had 40 minutes to talk about this, one of the most complex, important subjects in business. If I can answer any other questions for you, this is the work my company really does. I can probably give you an actual situational answer. So if you're trapped in your office and your desk appears to be melting and you want to know if the culture can really smell fear, get a hold of us. We will guide you out like in the first Matrix movie, through the cubicles, out to safety, okay? Stan@slapcompany.com. I'm happy to answer questions for you. Listen, I wrote these books. They're really very pithy reads, if I do say so myself. I'm not here selling the books, but if you want to know more about this stuff, the books are a good place to start. We've made a deal, because I know Amazon is kind of unreliable in South Africa and Africa. So we made a deal with this company, 800 CEO Read. They'll go ahead and give you a special price if you want it. I'm just passing it on to you. If you want to read the books, these guys are probably the place to do it, and they'll ship it to you pretty inexpensively. Now, to wrap this up, I have one recommendation for you as management and one for you as managers. As management, here is my most important recommendation to you going forward, which is don't plan your strategies like bad kung fu films. Has anybody here ever seen a bad kung fu film? Okay, you actually only have to see one. You're automatically pre-qualified to see them all because they're all exactly the same. In every bad kung fu film, our hero is a simple, humble kind of guy. Except he's also a blazing kung fu master, which is why he can be a simple, humble kind of guy, because if you piss him off, he can kill you with a paperclip. And in every bad kung fu movie, he's also a normal kind of guy. Except for one strange twist in every bad kung fu film, and that is our hero loves walking down dark, deserted roads in the middle of the night. I mean, some people, golf is just his thing. Invariably, in every bad kung fu film, that dark, deserted road leads to the town square, which is also dark and deserted because it's the middle of the night. And invariably, as soon as our hero arrives in the dark, deserted town square, he's promptly jumped by 5 bad guys. Now, they are also blazing kung fu masters, because apparently everybody in town is a blazing kung fu master. And our hero would be toast. The movie would be over in 10 minutes, except for the strange etiquette found in every bad kung fu film, which is that only one of the bad guys goes after our hero at a time, while the rest wait docilely by until that guy is dispatched. It's kind of, okay, my turn. There are 5 bad, dumb guys. And companies plan strategies the same way. Like, you're going to think through your pricing, your promotion, your go-to-market strategy, your brand strategy, your product strategy, whatever it is. You're going to think that through exhaustively. And when you have that strategy documented, you're going to consider what resources, time, talent, and dollars it needs. And you're going to collect those and allocate those and set yourself up to monitor those. And then you're going to execute your strategy. As if your competitors are going to wait until you've done all of those things and then say, oh, it's our turn. Okay, it doesn't work like that. The competition is in meetings right now too. Not as good as this one, but still. All the good work that you have done to grow and protect your company, that's just dealt you into the game. Now, you're in the big game. You can be in the game with the most aggressive, intelligent, well-resourced players around. The question is, which company wins the game? And the company that wins the game is the first company that understands this. You can't sell it outside if you can't sell it inside. Now, I just have 1 minute left, and I have one more recommendation for you. This time not as the organizing body called management, but this time as managers. Now, I don't know where you are in your management career. Maybe you're at the beginning, maybe you're at the middle, maybe you're nearing the end. Maybe this talk helped you realize you should end it as soon as possible. I don't know. But no matter where you are, if you are a manager, where you are in the arc of that career, I don't think it's ever too early to assume that it had concluded and you were looking back at it at last. And if you were looking back at your career as a manager, what do you want to have done in this entire career? Do you want to build a company? Do you want to make money? These are very good things. Do you want to have a legacy impact on the lives of the human beings who helped you do that? That's a great thing. Now, you don't have to give up the very good things to get the great thing, but you have to want the great thing. Understanding the true motivations of your employee culture can be the critical difference between your career success and failure or your company's success and extreme success. But this is not simply about your career or your company. As a manager, you have a deep, lingering impact on the lives of the members of your employee culture. If they are made to feel small at work, anxious, insecure, diminished, that's not going to stay on the job. That's going to jump the fence and follow them home. And those same people are partners and parents and neighbors and voters. The toxic impact of an anxious, uncertain, diminished population is incalculable. You know, a culture's profound search for safety and meaning in an uncertain world is a reminder that we all live in that world. We're all searching for the same thing. Treating your employee culture with grace and empathy is not simply a job performance tactic. It is a mirror that reflects your own true humanity. I'm asked all the time if you could give just one urgent recommendation to any manager in any company, in any country, at any level, but you could only tell them one thing. What is the most urgent recommendation you would give to any manager in the world? And I love it when people turn my life's work into a game show question, but I've had a chance to think about it. Let me leave you today with this, my most urgent recommendation. For yourself, because it's your lives that are at stake here. This time, the time you're spending in the business, you're not getting this time back. Your life is happening to you right now. For your family, because the health of your family outside the job depends in large part on the health of your family inside the job. For your employees, because it's not easy working in environments of constant uncertainty and pressure with regular reminders of how little control you have over your work life. For someone you only know as management. For your customers and clients, because people don't trust companies, they trust people. For your company, because you're not a products or services or technology company, you are a human company selling those things. And the pivot point upon which any strategic success rests is a discretionary effort of your human organization. And finally, for the world, because let's face it, things are very weird out there right now. I'm not just talking about economically. The world is a scary, uncertain place. And we actually have every indication that things are going to get a whole lot weirder before they get any better. Now, what is it that all the good people gathered here together today can possibly do about the conditions that affect the world at large? Not much, except to extend our own humanity to the people that we are closest to, including the people that we see every day, including our employees and our customers. And so for all of those reasons, I urge you to be human first and a manager second. Thank you.